Welcome to another edition of the Oklahoma Memo Podcast. My name is Ryan Welton, the founder and curator of your daily newsletter recap. It's a daily local news recap called Oklahoma Memo. And I am proud to say that after 9 months of having this newsletter live, that Oklahoma Memo has its first advertiser, and he's sitting directly across from me. This is Andy Bigbie, and he's starting a new business, and we're going to talk about that in a second. So technically, this is sponsored content, but I got to tell you, I wanted to have a conversation with Andy anyway on a couple of notes. We're both entrepreneurs. I've wanted to do more Oklahoma business coverage. And frankly, I wanted to offer value to anybody who would advertise in the Oklahoma Memo newsletter. And I'm a big believer in both the video and audio podcast in terms of having assets that you can get out there and tell your story. And everybody in business has a story. And so, Andy, I wanted to welcome you. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you for being the first advertiser in Oklahoma Memo history. And let's start with an introduction. Who are you? And tell me about Bigbie Insurance and Benefits.
Yeah. First, Ren, I'm a huge fan of your work and Oklahoma Memo. It is an easy to digest. All the facts are there, the links, it's a great piece of media that I look forward to every day. So just kudos. Very well done. Very well put together. I'm grateful for it. And I'm a believer in it, obviously, here we are. So I am, golly, I hate to use terms like this, but I guess the term I would reluctantly use is kind of serial entrepreneur. I've been really, really fortunate with several different businesses in several different industries. My home base has always been employee benefits and insurance. I've spent 22 years in that career. The last 2.5 to 3 years, I've been helping out a tech company that I'm a partner of. And so most of my time and energy over the last 2.5 to 3 years has been, front and center on that. And then I took some time off, reflected on a lot of things, and decided to open back up an insurance agency. I like talking to employers. I like talking to employees and helping them. And just when I've really spent some time reflecting what I enjoyed, again, I've been very fortunate. That's the season of life I'm in. I've also done an aerospace parts manufacturing company, I have some real estate holdings, and then obviously technology. This next season of life, I'm really trying to move from strength to strength and just focus in on what's meaningful, meaningful work to me that I enjoy, that brings the most value to people that I know and appreciate and love.
Make sure and get to some of the stories about your serial entrepreneurship because it's something I quite admire. And it's a big reason why I made the jump from Griffin Media to doing this. Success or no success, I wanted to give that a shot. And I'd worked for some great entrepreneurs over the years. So I want to hear some stories, but I don't want to bury the lead. Tell me about Bigbie Insurance and Benefits. Why now? What's different about it? And I know that this is the time of year where employees and small businesses are starting to think about and make elections for next year. How do you come into play with that?
So a couple of game-changing moments. I like to do open enrollment meetings with my clients. I prefer face-to-face, but sometimes Zoom or recording is the preferred client method, and we're always happy to do that. But what I found is that as I've done these meetings for over 20 years, I started to get better at it, and not to sound egotistical, but I could deliver a pretty good open enrollment pitch. I have a script, if you will, a checklist of items that I make sure and I go over. But the meaningful part is I've now had some of these clients and some of these employees for over a decade, and now they're starting to come up to me and say, "Hey, Andy, remember when you coached me into doing the HSA plan 10 years ago, and it was out of my comfort zone, and in the first year or two I was thrilled. I started having a large balance in my health savings account, my bank account, and pretty soon it got to be tens of thousands of dollars." And the point I kind of make with those types of plans and the examples I give in an open enrollment meeting, it's basically such that employees can if they have a catastrophic, a major medical catastrophic event, that's a mouthful. If employees have a major medical catastrophic event, they can not have to tap into their own personal family budget. Hey kids, we can't go on vacation this year because your brother had a broken leg and we had to meet our $6,500 deductible. Or and so and the feedback I'm getting from these employees are like, hey, orthodontia, not a problem. I negotiated a discounted price and I paid it out of my HSA, and it made a lot of sense. Or it doesn't have to be HSAs; it may be a health reimbursement arrangement, or just getting out there, talking to the employees, talking to the employers, giving them good analysis, meeting them where they need to be met with to be sure that the benefits we're delivering are impactful. And just when I look at what some other folks are doing in the business, and just how that's being done and kind of relayed, it was clear there's still a desperate need for that type of interaction with employers and their employees.
Something very practical that you noted there. In your example, you noted the person or in that story that they had negotiated a price. I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. All medical services are negotiable. Is that something that you educate your clients in person about? And just looking ahead to 2026, are there other things on the horizon that let's break some news here. Are there some things that people need to be looking for in the next year?
There are, let's start with the first part of your question. It's crucial to give employees real life examples and really slow down some of the more complex mechanics of a health policy. One of those kind of tips and tricks, if you will, is if you get a bill from your provider's office a week, 2 weeks after you've had a visit or a procedure or something, just wait. Look at when their payment due dates are and kind of read the terms. I'm not saying, oh, forget their bills, but I'm trying to kind of communicate that it's so important to wait until the insurance carrier has had enough time to review everything, where they feel comfortable that they've got most of the bills in for a given procedure or a given treatment. And then let them, work the claim first. And then most of the time, if there's a deductible due, you've paid that, ahead of time before the procedure. But as those shake out, the anesthesiologist will realize, oh my gosh, their deductible's been met. Insurance carrier issues payment 30 days later, 45 days later. They're happy, and they may not even send you a zero balance. You may have to call. And just that's the other thing, is just having someone that employees can interact with to help with on a claims issue. Even if it's not something that's just totally sideways, hey, I got this bill. I heard you talk about it at the open enrollment meeting. Just let's hop on a 5-minute call. What am I looking at here? And oftentimes, if it's something they just got, my first kind of course of action is, hey, let's give it 2 weeks, let it soak, and then let's see where the insurance carrier explanation of benefits comes in. We can match those two items up and see, if there's a balance due, what you truly may owe. And then just as we look forward to 2026 and all the things coming, there's a lot of change in individual policies, especially with these subsidies. And I don't want to get into the government shutdown or any politics there, but just there's a lot of people that are going to be impacted by that. And as people are impacted by that, there may be special enrollment considerations. Hey, I lost my subsidy. Is this a qualifying event to hop onto my group health insurance plan? The answer is it depends. And so just taking those answers very carefully and very cautiously, and making sure that the employers and the employees in those situations get the right guidance, I think is going to be really noteworthy, really important.
It's quite refreshing to hear you say that somebody could actually reach out to you if they had a question in a situation. I can't tell you how many times I've received what I'm never even sure if it's a bill. It's like a statement of work that has a dollar sign at the end of it. I'm like, if they really want it, they can reach out to me later. If they're
Right.
serious about this, because I never know. It's not like they're leaving me a check, but it's from everything that I've read about you and everything that we've talked about, this seems to be a differentiator, your willingness to meet people in person on Zoom and answer specific questions for anybody who's on one of the big box insurance plans. Imagine you trying to call a 1-800 number and the wait you would have. Oh yeah, me too. The wait
Call
you would,
us.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of crazy. So that's really refreshing. So you've been a serial entrepreneur, as you said, but let's talk about the business environment right now. From my perspective as a journalist, I don't really know anything about business. I am learning all this on the fly. But you've done this. What would you say to somebody who's an aspiring entrepreneur in late 25, early 2026? What does the business environment look like? And let's make it specific to Oklahoma. What are some of the pros, the cons, the challenges that you're seeing out there right now as an entrepreneur?
I am an eternal optimist, and sometimes that can be challenging. I'm also kind of learned from the school of hard knocks to ask a lot of questions, and I guess um, I hate to keep using the phrase tips and tricks, but what I would mention to a young aspiring entrepreneur is just, um, you're going to get knocked in the face. You're going to get rattled against the ropes and it's going to be painful. And don't give up. Keep fighting the good fight. Keep doing what you're doing, hold to your values, be a good human, have integrity, and just do what you can to stay in it, because if it's meant to be, it takes enough time for the market to soak in what it is that you're doing and what it is that you're kind of proposing, your added value to them. It takes some time for the market to absorb that and make a decision and realize what you're offering is powerful. Now that being said, when I do meet with entrepreneurs that are aspiring entrepreneurs, um, I try to disclaim that initially, like, "Hey, I'm not gonna candy coat. I'm gonna try and be direct with you and be honest with you about uh, some of the chinks in your armor or some of the weaknesses you might have in your business plan. Not because I want you to fail or to stop. It's the exact opposite. I hope that if I call this out, you can strengthen that area and take to it and maybe save some time and some heartache that I may have lived through." And then I guess going along with that just for a moment, being coachable. It took some gray hairs to realize that I could be a better, yeah, I could be someone that could be more coachable, and reflecting on that, just making sure to mention that to some of these young entrepreneurs too. Be coachable. If someone's been around the block a few times and maybe they've been in that industry, even if they're not a competitor, or maybe they are a competitor and they're willing to share some wisdom. If they're a competitor, take that with a grain of salt. But just be mindful of whatever advice they may be giving you. And then I can't really get into the macroeconomic level, but I'm glad you asked about Oklahoma. Oklahoma's got a lot of good things going on right now. We're a lot of times we're immune to some of the cyclical economics that are happening on the coast. I said I wasn't going to get macro, but I think that's pretty macro. But here in Oklahoma, the energy industry has its own fluctuations, and it's often that it isn't as impacted as much as the rest of the country, or as badly here. Now, that being said, we're also accustomed to boom and bust cycles here. And so we see a lot of that. But from the aerospace aviation industry to the energy sector, there's opportunities everywhere. And I like to use this phrase, there's always riches in the niches. It may not be building the next, you know, uh, horizontal drilling. That's a new concept, 30, 40 years ago, like, wow, like this is changing the industry. It doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be this monstrous, idea. It might be something little. You know what? We looked at the way that, horizontal drilling is happening. And did you realize with just a little bit of technology, a 5 to 10% increase in optimization can mean, millions and millions of dollars to our stakeholders, shareholders, and safety to our employees. There's a lot that you can look at as a niche opportunity that people just aren't doing or haven't looked at before. So don't rule those out. I think the local Oklahoma economy is doing well. I think it is robust. Um, and if you look, even some of our local venture capitalists in the true startup world, they're doing a lot. There's a lot of funds that are available. They're doing events. There's deals getting funded. And I think over the next 6 months, we're probably going to see more deals getting funded. I don't see that turning off in at least the next 12 months. I have no indications of that.
It's been a change in my perspective from the start of this venture to now, and that I'm a lot more focused on Oklahoma because I've found that there is plenty of opportunity right here in the Sooner State, and relatively, and it's not a political statement, it's a pretty friendly place to do business.
Correct. I'd agree with that. The people here just are kind and caring and warm. The business owners, golly, I've had hundreds of business owners that are clients, almost all counties in Oklahoma, and just they are appreciative to have folks here, local, willing to come out face to face and be helpful with them.
Awesome. I've long had the idea that I would just be a solopreneur, but who knows? Maybe it gets big enough to where I have employees. And you know what the next challenge I have at that point is? I'm going to have to provide some folks with health care. So this is great.
Correct.
The entrepreneurial journey. The moment that you start taking on employees, that feels I almost am starting to feel stressed because it starts to feel overwhelming. So are you working with super small businesses and entrepreneurs who are just starting to take on employees for the purpose of putting together benefits packages? And how does that work for an entrepreneur?
Great question. I have done startups previously. Our ideal client really is at least 5 to 10 employees, a little bit more mature, a little bit more seasoned, if you will. But that being said, Brian, I wouldn't turn somebody away who's looking for help. I mean, it may mean, meeting after 5 or, at kind of a non-traditional time. But I would make sure they had the help they needed. But that being said, yes, that crucial point where solopreneur becomes a team, that's an exciting moment. That's an exciting milestone. And just there's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration when that happens. Obviously laws, regulations change, but there's systems you can put in place that just make it a lot better for you and your employee and your business. And having been down that path a good many times, just knowing who to call and who to recruit for help, at those sizes are meaningful.
We're going to include in this podcast for anybody who's watching, we're at about the 18-minute mark now. If you stuck around this long, congratulations and thank you. If you want to put your questions for Andy in the comments below, I will make sure he sees them. So if you have insurance related questions, I don't know what the regulations are with that. I'll just make sure and pass
Please.
along to Andy and I'll have his contact information there. So
Fantastic.
but I wanted to have some time here because we try to do these in 30-minute chunks. I want to talk about your serial entrepreneur journey because you haven't only done insurance, you've done other things. Are there any particular roles in the entrepreneurial world that you would like to highlight or talk about? And how did they inform what you're about to embark on now?
So, golly, another euphemism, another phrase that I often use is necessity is the mother of all invention, and that's probably overused. But when the Affordable Care Act passed, golly, 15 years ago. I mean, it was passed '08, but enacted in 2010. I had just um, merged in with some partners of mine, and we had a very large, fast-growing agency. At the time, I had I won't mention the size of the loan, but a very large loan, as many young entrepreneurs do. And I was worried that the older, more seasoned people in the business were like, "Oh, this is going to put us out of business. Consultants are not no longer going to be a thing." And so I found myself having some anxiety about that and reading major sections of the law. and I read about these subsidies that were going to be available and how actually more people were going to be covered, and I could go on and on. And so I saw opportunity about that, and this was before a lot of that was kind of making headlines. I mean, it was doom and gloom in all 50 states at that time, and so I read about that and talked my partners into doing a startup. And so we ended up getting, golly, over like 1,300 people signed up on Affordable Care Act plans. And so, it was a startup. And InsurTech was not really a word back then. But it was a fantastic learning, learning environment for me because I had to go out and fundraise and ended up, putting dollars together largely with our partnership, which was convincing these older people who, that this isn't going to be doom and gloom. We're still going to be here, and this is an opportunity for us. And eventually, they saw what I was preaching and got on board, and we did this really cool thing. But just that's why I say the riches are in the niches, and also just that. Um, it forced me to learn technology. I've never been a developer, but I had to use an outsourced developer and really be a product manager, product owner. And, you just assume the developers and other people are the ones who do that, but it's not always someone who can code that takes that responsibility. It's really about taking a vision, putting a plan in place and rolling it out. And if something comes up, you just have to recalculate. Doesn't mean give up. It just means let's pause for a minute, recalculate, and keep going. And so that led into just a tremendous amount of growth for me personally and professionally. Use some of that, what I learned there, to build some tools in the benefits world that were incredibly cool. They optimized some of the workflows we had to do, and it basically. On the employee benefits side, we built technologies and tools that allowed our team to not have to work as hard, and which meant we could see more customers, we could scale faster, and just help more people. And so um, it took a decade before the market kind of caught up to that. And so right here in Oklahoma, that happened. And we actually it was great. We got acquired and went through that whole process. And truth be told, timing wise, I'm just now kind of finishing some of my obligations under that acquisition. And really and truly spent another, kind of 2.5, 3 years in technology and in the technology firm locally, Clever, that I'm a partner of. And now I just am back to benefits, which I've always loved. My wife and I also did an aerospace parts manufacturing company. Um, Aerospace industry here in Oklahoma is booming. And there's a lot of shops that do that type of work
How did you
here.
how did you get into that? You're like a Walter Mitty of entrepreneurs.
Um, we saw opportunity in the industry, and I had looked at it and came back to it. And a lot of people don't know that's actually the largest industry in Oklahoma. It's not energy, it's aerospace. Now, a lot of that has to do with the FAA and Tinker, but it's the largest industry here in Oklahoma. And so there's opportunity with that. And you see some of the bigger players moving in, like I remember that space, and then, oh, that's Boeing is doing they're taking over that entire space, like, wow, like, that's amazing to me, and then Boeing brings in these a lot of these little smaller companies start popping up around it, and I'm like, "Okay, those parking lots are full, let's look at this more closely." And so, just long story short, got all of our certifications, got the machines put together, head engineer running things, and it worked really well. Learned a whole lot. I will say this, wasn't didn't end up being a tremendous commercial success, because we didn't have enough time to continue soaking with it. Also, head engineer got just a fantastic opportunity with Blue Origin, in kind of like a upper level management role. And when Nicole and I talked about it, we were just like, I don't know if I want to try and go find another engineer. It's not We just, weren't willing to part ways, or excuse me, we weren't willing to seek out another engineer and just go through that vetting process. So we ended up uh, selling the aerospace parts manufacturing company with all its certs, and all its machines. And again, for about 3.5, 4 years, it was a very cool, very different venture from what my normal day to day was, if you will.
But you're coming back to what your sort of like your true love is in terms of working with people on something that is very important and can be stressful to entrepreneurs, which is insurance and benefits. Was there like sort of a moment as you were thinking what's next that really was an epiphany for you as to why this, why now?
It was, that HSA I gave kind of towards the beginning of the podcast, was pivotal, but also just, when you have hundreds of clients across Oklahoma, uh, a trip to Ada would have me driving by 4 of my former clients, and I just couldn't help but, think about the decades that I've spent, serving them and helping them. And then also just, making a difference. Um, you don't realize it, but when someone finds themselves with an unforeseen catastrophic medical event, it's I mean, many people are walking a tightrope that we don't talk about a lot of times, and it may be financial, it may be head of household or running a business or just an employee with kids. And if you find yourself in that situation, I think we do ourselves a disservice to not be up to speed on just on what all policies are out there and what types of plans can help with that sort of thing. And I don't want to get into like an insurance pitch because that's not the purpose of this, but just even something like an employer paid short and long-term disability plan, it's less expensive than a lot of employers think, and if the employee can earn at least 65, 65, 66 and 2/3 of their take-home pay, they're at least not gonna lose their home, you know what I mean? Like, if it's something that lasts months or even years, it can be highly impactful to them, and there's also a moment where the employee, if they find themselves in that situation, immediately looks to their employer and just, "Hey, like, how long are you gonna continue to pay me? Or are you going to continue to pay me?" And those types of things are very, impactful, and you hear stories and you talk to people, I talk to thousands of people a year at these open enrollment meetings. You hear a lot of stories and see the good that you can do, when you're out there amongst the people, if that makes sense.
Does, and it's important not only for the employee and their family, but for the employer who has a good employee. I mean, it's just, I caught that on some of the videos that you had showed me. I was like, wasn't really thinking about that from that perspective. While we have a couple minutes left, I want to start, I think about content IP often. Content is just something that makes your podcast unique. And I want to always be sure this is something that I've picked up from other podcasts. Are there any books you're reading, podcasts you're listening to that are particularly
Yes.
informative or helpful that folks might be interested in?
I would say, some of the books that have been really impactful to me, golly, Built to Sell, Good to Great, From Strength to Strength. There's just a laundry list of them. Get a Grip, the whole EOS entrepreneurial operating system. There was a lot of buzz around that, 3 to 5 years ago as they were kind of reaching a large segment of the small business market. But a lot of those concepts can be boiled down to, um, build a process, find ways to optimize what it is you're doing in your business and for your clients. Because at the end of the day, you're absolutely your best self when you can go on vacations and when you can disconnect and take your holiday breaks and be present for those that you love. And a lot of that a lot of that has to do with when you get to the point of reflection and being able to build in a system or process. and replicate some of those things that some of your employees can do. That's a light bulb moment. And most of those books that I enjoy are some variation of that. The Phoenix Project, that's a good kind of technology centered, but at the same time applicable to so many different industries. I would highly recommend those. Podcasts, golly, I was trying to think. I have been. I don't know that I have a lot of podcasts that I would share. I'm more of a book guy. Not downplaying podcasts, just haven't absorbed a lot of those as of late.
Two of my favorite, this will be no surprise for anybody who's listened to me, Pivot with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. It's a
Yep.
fantastic one on media and tech, and then there's new one. Of course, I'm a digital content guy, so I've read Good to Great. I've read the 1 Minute Manager. I've read a lot of these books, and a lot of all the Patrick Lencioni books I respect and admire. But I am less a reader. I'm a skimmer, and it's not that I'm a listener. But if I latch onto a podcast, it almost becomes this episodic treat.
Yep.
And it's just, you got Pivot, but there's another one, a guy named Peter Kafka in Channels that really talks about things like optimizing podcasts, optimizing newsletters, and what's really happening in the creator economy. And I think our confluence right here is the creator economy meeting the practical aspects of the creator economy and the service that you bring to local businesses. So, Andy, I appreciate your time in joining with me, and I hope
Thank you.
that as insurance topics come up, whether it's sponsored or not, that we hop on a Zoom, and if folks have questions, we try to answer them.
100%. Happy to. More than happy to. Absolutely. Brian, it's been a pleasure. Huge thank you.
Well, you are very welcome, folks. If you see this, like, subscribe, leave a comment. I'll make sure and get it to Andy. And be sure to check out Andy's website. It'll all be in the comment. It's called Bigbie Insurance and Benefits. Andy Bigbie, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.